We both believe there's something important in stilling the mind and body. Sometimes it's only by focusing attention on something completely different or being distracted that it becomes possible to see more clearly. Likewise, qualitative research isn't something that we can do quickly. It takes time when trying to understand the world and people's lives, to percolate, to think about what it is we need to focus on. And it needs the right environment, the right tools, to dislodge from our bodies those things that might not easily yield or reveal themselves. And so as a prelude to this keynote and thinking about the things in our research practice that we find important, we spent the day in St Ives and visited the Tate Gallery, allowing the scenery and the work of other artists to inspire and provoke us. In what follows, we offer reflections on what we've learned and what we continue to wrestle with across 3 decades of arts-based practice. Nice cup of tea.
Good.
It's a Tuesday morning.
It is. And quite a nice one. A little bit of sunlight peeking through the clouds.
Yeah, it's gonna.
And coming through that fir tree there.
Hopefully it's going to hit us in about half an hour.
Yeah, probably.
We'll be in the sun.
Yeah. I think what I'm really interested in sharing in this keynote today, I know from Helly Winter described some of the people that might be at the conference and their potential interests. So we don't know you, but I hope what we can talk about is going to be relevant to where you're at in your research practice. And I think one of the things for us was a lot of this begun because there was a need for it. And one of the things that we've talked about, and we've written about it in the Handbook of Autoethnography chapter, for example, the sense that there's something missing. That the existing portrayals of human life are missing something if they rely solely on scientific or social scientific renderings.
And recognising that now is a thought process and theoretical, but at the time when we were doctoral students, we wouldn't have been able to describe it like that. This has been ongoing over the last 20 years, how we've taken little steps at a time.
Yeah, and you wrote about it in one of your autoethnographies as a niggle, I think was the word you used, a tension, that there's something not quite right here. I think we found that in our PhD research. I definitely, when I was doing the mental health work in sport and physical activity, there was something in what I was experiencing through the ethnography, through meeting the people at the Mental Health Day Centre, spending time with them, learning about their lives, listening to them, taking part in activities with them, that was not captured within the literature, mental health literature at the time, psychology textbooks, psychiatry books, medical writings.
And I remember when we wrote The Long Run, and if you compare how you describe in a story form of meeting one of your participants at the day centre and having a cup of tea and him saying, "Oh, you're one of us, you're a runner."
Yeah.
Ben strides out of the kitchen of the Mental Health Day Centre cafe wearing an end-of-the-day apron. He wipes his palms on it before he leans over the counter to shake my hand warmly.
So you're one of us, eh? A runner, I mean. What did you say your name was?
It's David. David, good to meet you, Ben. I've heard a lot about you. I'm not really sure I'm a runner, but I do run a bit. Nothing like what you do, though.
That's all right, mate. We all got to start somewhere. We'll have you running in the next Bristol Half Marathon. Don't you worry what you have.
You read alongside that the article that was published in a scientific journal about your research methods. None of that's in there.
Yeah. And I think, again, as we moved on through the Across the Tamar project, as we moved on through the Let's Dance project, Dance for Life, with the young people in Southwest. As each project we've gone through, we've found when we've been in the setting, when we've been doing fieldwork, when we've been meeting participants, there's always something missing. There's always something that's resisting being written about.
So there's something about the place that instills something in our bodies that when we come to write up in a traditional way, we really notice is missing.
Yeah, it could be the place or it could be the people themselves. You know, every human is complex and has many sides. So I think we've wanted to try and get at those unspoken sides, the marginal sides, the alternative. So I've really felt it around mental health and trauma particularly. There's so much that is unspeakable. That is the nature of trauma. In itself, it is thought to be unspeakable.
So would now be a good time for an example?
Yeah, so I think one of the more projects that we've both been involved in is the military research. So that was doing some ethnographic and narrative work with military personnel who'd experienced some kind of trauma, physical or psychological or both. And we were working at a residential adventure centre that was providing support for their personal development and rehabilitation. And there was one story that we published in a journal article in Sport Education Society, titled Stories from a Spinning Wheelchair, which, as I just reread the story now, short little excerpt, it's come from the field work, and it tries to capture as briefly as possible my experiences of first meeting this particular soldier, and then trying to find a way to research, understand and represent aspects of his life.
Are you going to read that for us?
Yeah. Stories from a spinning wheelchair. The first time I see Josh, one member of this week's group, I feel intimidated. Although he looks young, something about his body, which is lean, hard and wiry, or his look, shaved black hair, an intense stare in his eyes, or perhaps even his demeanour, makes me want to keep my distance. At the same time, as an inquiring field worker with a job to do, I try to understand him. In a break during the second activity of the day, Josh wanders away from the group to sit in one of 8 sleek black wheelchairs, specially customised for basketball. They're parked at the side of the hall. I follow, keeping a little distance, before sitting in another one of the wheelchairs. These are no standard wheelchairs, but instead they have the feel of a high-performance racing bike. They're light, responsive, fast, and infinitely manoeuvrable. I defy anyone to sit in one without wanting to take it for a spin. And that's exactly what Josh begins to do, wheeling, pivoting, reversing, accelerating, before suddenly making abrupt halts. And I start doing the same. Quietly, without being noticed by the rest of the group, we engage in some kind of tentative dance in our wheeled contraptions. Josh smiles once or twice. I even find myself smiling too. We make eye contact occasionally, and we keep our peace. Josh is the first to speak. "These things are cool," he says, sending himself into rapid 360. "I'd never have known." "Me neither," I reply. "They just make you want to move, don't they?" "Oh, I haven't moved this much for the past year. I've done fuck all since I've been back, really. For a year I was just nowhere, drinking like all through the day. It started off as a celebration. It was a big party. You know, I was glad to be alive, but I just couldn't stop." "Were you back from Afghan?" "Yeah." Josh pauses, his manoeuvres slow. We make eye contact. "You can't prepare for it, for what you see," he says. "No one should see that stuff." Josh looks away and starts spinning again. "Back home I was drinking, taking stuff all the time, trying to get it out of my head. I saw a doctor and he just gave me loads of tablets, antidepressants, sleeping pills, and I was just like, I'm going to use all these and kill myself. And it seemed like they really didn't care if I did. After the third time I tried to take my life, that's when I got to see a decent doctor who said, you know, why haven't you been treated for PTSD?
I was just going to say I love that story. I get a real sense of two blokes in two wheelchairs, and that the tension between you, and just how being in a wheelchair and having a bit of fun and kind of allowed things to happen. I can feel it, the about to happenness of it, I suppose.
That's great. That's really good to hear. That's what I wanted. That's how I experienced, as close as I could get to how I experienced it.
Yeah.
And that was how he started to talk. I couldn't even think how to initiate a conversation with him, really. This is me as well as him. It's not a deficiency on his part. It's the dynamics between us. I did find it intimidating. Several of the soldiers, it wasn't unusual. You know, it's a particularly masculine kind of environment. It's very heterosexual and competitive and somewhat sexist at times. So I did find that difficult, and it definitely was the case that there was a whole load of unspoken stuff. I could have written about that as an ethnographer.
Yes.
But I didn't have his stories. But his stories started to leak out through that strange seated dance. And I think the release of, just like you said, having a bit of fun. It was like bodily movements released the stories, released his ability to talk about things, took the pressure off it. Very different to sitting in a psychoanalysis, for example.
It's also like you say, sometimes when you're talking about songwriting, you say there's songs in this guitar, you change guitar and you find a song in it. It's like there's also stories in objects, there's stories in those wheelchairs, there's stories in the movement of those wheelchairs, there's stories...
Well, I mean, I think there's something happens when our bodies move, certainly for me, you know, and there's something about curves for me. I remember it from being a child going skiing, cutting curves. When your edges bite the snow and you feel in your body those particular forces of a curve. And it's the same surfing. It's not such long rides when you're surfing, but you get a few seconds of that, and that does something good to me.
It's funny you say that, because I also feel that if I'm doing pastels and charcoal, and I love feeling the charcoal on the page and on my fingers, and the movement I like to make is exactly as you describe it. It's a curve, a wave. There's something about that shape. Yeah,
and I find it in a different way through yoga. You know, sun salutation sequences are essentially lots of curves through your body in space. And I mean, for me, that story is something that's quite close to what we might have in traditional ethnographic research.
Yes.
It's based on field work, and it has some direct excerpts from the participants. It wasn't something that was... I didn't stop halfway through and say, wait a minute, Josh, let me get my recorder out.
No.
You know, so it's not verbatim, it's not recorded. They're from memory. And I made those notes on a daily basis as soon as possible after the activity. But essentially it's something that you might have seen 30 years ago, 40 years ago in an ethnography. But I think it's really an important way for me to begin moving away from science and theory into trying to render those moments of experience. And I think that then set the stage for us to bring in other arts-based approaches which are more overtly artistic or creative or aesthetic than something like that.
So you started, if somebody looked back on it, they would say, oh, the first time David does something more creative than the traditional is a story.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the next step was the poems.
Yeah.
Or the poetic representations. And I suppose the first step for me was the poetic representations, and then came the stories.
Yeah, the poems are in your PhD, aren't
yes.
they? It was very unusual at the time, 20 years ago.
Yes.
So I can remember on the Across the Tamar project, soon after we finished our PhDs, you being gently encouraging to me to explore poetic renderings. So we're using words, we're using language still, but in a very different way, a very more minimalist, more lyrical, more evocative potentially way than the sort of story that I've just read.
Was it My Murderous Face that you started with, or was it When Your Time Comes?
I remember we interviewed one participant together.
Now,
yeah, and we'd met her at the Life Begins at 60 day in the town hall, and she was significantly over 60. Her life had begun some 23 years ago, because she was 83, we found out later.
Yeah.
So she had cycled in from a very rural location
And that
where she lives.
struck us, didn't it?
Yeah.
I remember we were having our sandwiches after the exhibition on the edge of town, and you said, "Oh, that's that woman."
Okay. And I remember we were sat in her kitchen, country cottage, with a Rayburn cooker and heater in the kitchen, the dog in the basket, lots of books and letters out on her big kitchen table, and we were sat around that with a massive pot of tea.
And we asked her whether, as we would with all our participants, do you mind if we record the conversation? And it's the one and only time someone's actually said, actually, I prefer if you didn't record it. And then I think I had a momentary panic, thinking, what are we going to do now? And both you and I then just took notepads and pens and tried to scribble. Well, I was scribbling frantically, trying to capture exact words as she'd spoken.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And as we're talking about this now, I'm seeing that as probably, maybe that's why I was able to go into poetry for the first time with this.
Yeah.
Because poetry, Brian Taylor, a great friend of mine, said many years ago that for him, poetry is about distillation.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that we were already distilling. We didn't have 2.5 hours of recorded interview transcribed into 56 pages of conversation. We had a distillation in our field notes of what Nell had been talking about already. So perhaps the first step of a poetic analysis, if that's the right phrase, was already taking place.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which was the first poem I worked on, but I think I remember working with things that didn't become poems, playing with words. You know, you'd encouraged me to just try that. I was used to doing that with song lyrics, although I tended not to start with words on the page, which I did have words on the page. I'd written out some key words that had resonated with me. And I suppose both the poems that you mentioned, My Murderous Face and When Your Time Comes, were things that had struck me really powerfully.
Yes.
This woman's reflections on life and impending death were beautiful and inspiring to me. I wanted to preserve them for myself, as well as for the audiences of her research. And My Murderous Face, to hear this 83-year-old woman talking about this feisty spirit of resisting what the culture, including some of her family members, wanted her to do and to be.
She'd taken us
inspiring.
On a tour of her house because she wanted to share something with us that was important to her, and she said, I've painted my bedroom ceiling and I can't tell other people because they try and stop you. Yeah,
which is definitely, that spirit is there within the My Murderous Face poem, or that,
There's a sound about a place when it's waking up, a buzz. So I would go out before the world wakes up, down to the beach. There's great joy in these things. Still now I have a lot of childishness in me, little things that people don't notice. On my bike I'm an Arthurian knight, off to seek adventure. And a woman of 83. Those enchanted woods, had them all to myself. I thought I'm going to pay for this long walk, but I didn't. I slept well. Life teaches you a lot. You learn to accept the inevitable, a son getting a bike, a son getting a wife, and death. So I can't get to the bottom of the steep slope. I sit on my bottom and slide down, solve the problem, and plan for the day I cycle to Wongford, Groggle-Holt and Windbound. First, they try and get you remarried. When they realise you don't want that, they start on poor old soul up there on her own. But I like being on my own. There's always a dog. Dogs always turn up when you need them. Getting rid of the car was going to change my life. Everyone said, you can't live out there without a car. But I proved them wrong 15 years ago. My murderous face when I want to do something but can't. You don't accept things. You just walk all over them. You've got to. Like painting my bedroom ceiling. I've only told 2 people. If you tell people, they stop you from doing it, treat you like children. When I couldn't walk, the toe went an extraordinary colour. I knitted 2 jumpers, turned out the cupboards and built a stone wall. Friends said, what if you drop a rock on your foot? I say, but what if I don't?
It helps when you get old to know what you want. I try not to have anything in the house I don't need or I don't really like. You use things. You're not extravagant with things. It's not because you're mean, simply because it's the right thing. I went to Devon a couple of years ago, but it's all too much of an effort. The life I want to see, it's not there anymore. It's in my mind. It's all ugly things there now. I have a cow-like mentality. My son told me, no ambition. I have been lucky. Everything I want is in front. The secret of keeping going. If you're not independent, then you're done. Going into prison, going into a home. If you can get hold of a book and you've got a little brain, then you're okay. Most of life is really only teaching you to manage when your time comes, to accept change. Most change seems to be for the worst, but it's not up to me to harp on. The most helpful things anybody can do for my life is when somebody I like comes out, brings something I might need, like a pint of milk or some apples. It's all really making up your own substitutes for everything. I've never done anything sensational or startling. Just gone along and I've liked it. I think this is really interesting, us talking about this practice, because we come up again against the essential unspeakableness of it, of creative practice. Part of the reason that I'm in music and songs which use words but very sparingly and in a different way than you would in academia or in a story, part of the reason I'm doing that is because I can't find the words to put in, to explain or express whatever it is, and that applies to the process as well as the topic. So I do find it's quite hard to talk about when I've read interviews with other songwriters, there's a great book called Songwriters on Songwriting, and it's interviews with dozens, some of the great songwriters of Western music of the last 50 years or so. Dylan, Paul Simon, Leonard Cohen, Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, I think, is in there. Lots of great writers have talked about, almost as if when they're writing a song, they're following a stream. I think the interviewer pushed John Hyatt's, an American songwriter, and I went, okay, what's the source of that stream? And he said, well, I think it's God or somebody like her. It's really hard to describe it.
Yes.
So I think I have a sense, Townes Van Zandt, the late American country writer, talked about the sense that he had when he wrote a song, that anyone who happened to be in that place and space at that time could have picked up that song. It happened to be him.
Yeah.
Noel Gallagher's talked about it. Like, I'm glad I get on my guitar and play every day, so I get the good songs rather than Bono getting them.
Yes.
You know.
I like that when he said that.
And there is. It sounds a bit mystic or something, but there is a sense I have of there's something there. The best I can do is sort of try to make it into a song, bring it into being, rather than me leading it, deciding, okay, it's just not a case of saying, okay, I want to write a song in this style, and okay, this is going to be a rock song, let's go ahead and write a rock song. I want it to be one that will sound really cool and put a drummer on, it's going to be great on the radio. It doesn't work like that for me. I go off, then if I'm lucky, I'm inspired by some chords, some rhythm, sounds, and that will take me in a direction. So a song like Mosquito started with the chords and that rhythm that was sinister. That was the feel of that, and it led me in a direction. And I think probably that music came before the words and the topic. And it's as if the chords and the playing led me into that tale. And I felt like, okay, when it works, I found it rather than I've made it.
Matt lives among the silvered machines. The benches, the bars, the dumbbells, the steel. Crunch and a clang, gasp, muted scream. It's a procession of bodies. It's a daily routine. Matt's pleased with his reflection. He likes what he sees, pectorals that curve beneath the close cloth of his vest. Deltoids rounded yet cut, shimmer with sweat. Matt grabs hold of his biceps, gives them a squeeze. Pumped for an hour, almost ready to leave, Matt walks around the lat pull-down machine, and then bang, it happens. Everybody frees. The music goes silent, bodies vanish from sight. Matt's focus is narrowed, the thought he had disappeared. Stood 3 feet away from the shaved-headed guy who's looking at Matt, right in the eye. Fight or flight? Or is there another option the physiologist miss? The guy searches Matt's eyes for a clue, a reveal. Together for a moment, they're too scared to steal. Matt looks away at the wall. The guy looks down at his watch. Their shoulders twist sideways, dance around the machine. But in one of many mirrors, Matt watches him still. Desire, attraction, the fear, the thrill. Feels real when I'm screaming and shouting. I'm a drunk man out on the ties, dreaming of love, with fear in my mind. It's long enough watching and waiting while you're flying around my head. Full of my blood, you breathe in my air. Is it good enough to hope? Am I strong enough to know? Stand up! these walls open me up, whatever the cost. Is it good enough to hope? Am I strong enough to know? I don't know. I don't know.
So when you were talking about writing Gwyddian Sands there, and you talked about your own father's loss of your own father, and that being in this particular participant's life as well, I do think that's a really powerful thing. That this is reflective work. You know, songwriting as reflexive practice is even a subtitle of one of your papers. You can't not be present for this. There is a sense of a calling. You know, I do think anyone can write a rubbish song that doesn't really sing, but to write a song that does sing, I think we are dealing with truths. You can't fake it, I don't think. You can hear the songs that are faked. So when a song like Gwyddian Sands, which is so emotive to many people, it is a powerful call to arms for me, in a feminist sense.
Yes.
And it is a counter story from being
Yes.
that as well. And it has the heart, the beating heart of the rhythm that you've used there. I think it's almost impossible not to bring our own lives to the table. There is a blurring of self and other, not emerging, but we've got to both be there. And I never know when I'm writing a song for sure who I'm writing about,
Yes.
whether it's the person that I might be thinking about, whether that's someone important in my life, or whether it's a participant, or whether it's me and my. And I think there's something fertile in that, of crossing boundaries, bridging between self and other. So if I remember correctly, which is highly unlikely, Gwyddian Sands was the first, or one of the first research films, certainly the first time you'd made a film to accompany one of the songs from research.
Yes. When we've discussed films and pictures, I think one of the things that I've always said to you is that when you play music, I see things pictorially in my head.
Yeah.
I get a vision, and I get inspired, again, that inspiration word, to get what's in my head out somewhere. So it's another layering of what you're doing. In some ways that narrows it, because when you point the camera in this way, you're not getting all of that. So the song is big and broad and lots of things, and my mind captures a little bit of what that would look like, and what would support the telling, the sharing, expand it in some ways, bring colour in a visual sense. And so that's what I'm trying to do when I'm making a film.
And that's quite comforting to me, because one of the things I've struggled with using songs in research is that songs are necessarily abstract. Music is more abstract, instrumental music.
Yes.
We have some words, but they're often lyrical, or their meaning isn't logical or coherently evident or clear. So most of my songs are somewhat abstract, even the more narrative ones. So I feel like that's it could be seen as a weakness in research terms. It's not precise.
Yes.
It's ambiguous. It isn't a weakness. We need that openness too. It's a danger in being too precise or too unambiguous. We need to keep some fluidity, I think. But
Yes.
how you just described using the films, that's helping potentially narrow, or maybe focus is a better word, an audience's how they hear the song. So I think we can somewhat balance up the abstractness through the film as well, the combination of the music and the moving image.
I also feel that a lot of the time when I think about the research methods courses that I was originally introduced to, everything takes people out, even the cutting and culling of an extract to thematically analyse it, and you cut that out and you put it on a page. What the film does, and a lot of our films, it takes people back to this is where these women walked. This is the land that nurtured them, that held them, that they grew up in. So you're putting all of that back. You're putting the place back. You're putting the surroundings, the markers, the landmarks in that woman's life are returning. This is what she would have seen, and I'm showing you that.
Yeah, and definitely I can see that in that video especially. And I'm also thinking, as we're talking, going back to accessibility and engagement, we have to be a bit aware of the times.
Yes.
You know, I don't feel that the early academic experiences they were very cut off. How do people access and engage material now? Well, it's actually through moving image.
Yes.
We now have the possibility of YouTube and other online platforms. Most people can access from some sort of device, even their phones.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by moving into the YouTube and including a film alongside the music, for me the film's very much secondary to the song and the music.
Yes.
But I don't think that's the case for most people. And it certainly allows us onto a platform where we have the potential to reach far more people than if it was just an audio track.
I like also that we can be in it with them. You know, something that we found in our early research. It was our participants over there and us over here. And through this way of working, we're with them.
Yeah. Whether it's our voice and sounds and noises, or whether we're having a small cameo in the film. Yeah. It's a definite sense of community, and I think that's through film and song and through an online platform where people can comment. I get the sense, and the Blue Funnel Line is one example where people have picked up on that, and lots of people have commented.
Yeah.
Is it nearly, I think, 10,000 views?
Yeah.
That's way more than any journal article we've written.
Yeah.
And that is people, there are some people in academia who are looking at it for sure, but it's many people outside academic that wouldn't be accessing social research otherwise.
Exactly. And it's also another thing that when we performed across the Tamar, which was fantastic, and I've always just experienced and embodied learning, seeing, connection when we perform it, and I don't have that when we show the film. But the film carries on doing its work when we can't be there.
Yeah.
So if we want, and we feel the research has something to say, if we want to give people a voice in today's world, we have to find a medium that allows them to carry on speaking when we're too tired or we don't have the opportunity.
And how powerfully in this last 18 months the whole world has been shown the importance of that. When we're all absent from each other's lives. Many people, music has sustained itself through online concerts, through YouTube. Artists are recording things, making films, posting them on YouTube as we go through this pandemic. So we have a legacy. It's something that has the potential to endure if it's there. That's really important.
Girls come down to Gwydion Sands. Leave your labour, leave your lands. Come and run and dance with me. Be the woman you want to be. Sunlight came and went so fast. Winter chill and farther past. Away to where the spirits be. Now what's gonna become of me? work for all she knew. She was proud and she stood true. Schoolmaster, he turned a blind eye, 'cause he knew he just couldn't get by. Young girl working on the line, small hands but she's doing fine. Working with men 4 times her age, but it means she gets a wage. Time moved on, she grew strong. Her brother sent her away to school, she never learned to write. Seems she's no fool. Girls come down to Gwithian sands. Leave your labour, leave your lands. Come and run and dance with me. Be the woman you want to be. Young men all went off to war, now in pain as well as poor. Sisters, come on and play your part, but all this killing ain't in my heart. Time moved on, she grew strong. With children of her own to feed, she never learned to write. Seems she's no need. Girls come down to Gwithian sands. Leave your labour, leave your lands. Come and run and dance with me. Be the woman you want to be. Bobby Green moved into town, spewing smoke and laying down tarmac on golden fields of hay. Now where are my children gonna play? Time moved on, and now she's not so strong. With a husband who barely clings to life, she never learned to write. She's just a wife. Girls come down to Gwithian sands. Leave your labour, leave your lands. Come and run and dance with me. Let's be the women we want to be.
Now those buying drugs ain't too fussy where they get the money. They'd rather mug someone who don't fight back. They seem to spend a lot of time clutching their testicles. Strange sort of habit. Don't know if you've noticed it. Me, I don't mind. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. But obviously, I'm still capable of fighting back. I'm street, I'm urban, got tattoos, I can spit. But I do worry about the old ladies. I'd like to think there was someone looking out for them.
But I was bad. I had a gun. I don't know why. Just being blasted rude.
Trapped. I feel trapped. All my family, my friends, my doctor is over there. It's not very far.
but it is with that subway.
I love living here. I got a few quibbles about it. I can't open those windows. They fixed it, so they only open 3 inches. If there's a fire out there, where am I going to go? Why can't I open my windows? That's the question I want to know. I'd like control, over my own little environment, my own little flat, so I can open the windows if it gets too hot. But other than that, I'm 69. I'm quite happy. I love this little flat.
Could I ask you, because maybe this is one last thing, there's a big chasm between actually writing something and sharing it and it being valued by others. And so we've been in that mix for each other. Could you just talk a little bit about that? Because I'm never sure. It's a big thing even to share it with one of us.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I tend to be quite judgmental about myself and my own work. So I struggle, talked about it as a leap of faith. Well, faith is something I struggle with.
Yes.
Confidence in, and that if I do have confidence to stand up and perform a song, it's because the song is tried and tested.
Yes.
Because I feel its heart, and then you and perhaps others have responded to it. So I can believe in the song, even if I can't believe in myself as a singer or a guitarist or a researcher or whatever human being. So the songs have that sometimes, but it's not all the songs. So there are different stages, I suppose, and there is a first step for me, which used to be easy when I was younger. When I was 19 writing songs, I'd just go with whatever was there, and I'd love it because it was all new, and it was playing the guitar, and it was making a noise, and it's a miracle. I'm right, wow, everything's new. You've never written a song, so it's bound to be new, whatever you do. Yeah. Over the years, it's harder to find something, not harder, but there are less new things. You've written 200 songs already. You need something different for it to. So the excitement isn't always there. I've become more tired through working in academia full time for many years now.
Yes.
I don't have the energy I used to have, or certainly not till I'm on holiday. So I suppose that my own belief is probably more sketchy now. So for me, it's always been, since I've known you, it's been very important that I share with you. And I remember sometimes I've phoned you up, you've been driving, on a mobile call, and I've played you the song.
Yes, I've stopped the car, pulled into a lay-by and just listened.
So having a trusted confidant is really important for this work. I wouldn't share it with 99% of academics that I know. I can think of some that would be absolute crushing death to share something like this with.
Yes.
They just, that I don't trust them, for one thing, or they're not in a position that they're able to comment, or they've got too much of themselves in the game. Jealousy. So I think it's really important to find a person or a small group that can hear it like perhaps the ideal therapist might hear it, in an open and accepting and not necessarily a judgmental way. I think that first step of being heard is really important. Later on, when we've stabilised, or when I've stabilised, we can start to think, okay, is this song valuable enough to be included, to be recorded or performed or shared more widely? Is it doing some work that's useful? But there is I am in the song, so I do need a gentle first witnessing.
Yeah. So there's just two things from that I think is important to hold on to. Is that we only learn about the song by the reaction of others, and when we do share it, what I didn't know about Gwythian Sands, whether it was a useful ditty or not, but it's from you, and then you pushing on to include it in the set when we performed it, and then it's when we put it on YouTube and made a film of it, and it's the response from other people all over the world that convinces me that actually the song has worth. Not, haven't I got a great song?
Yes.
It's all from other people.
This isn't idle practice. We're not just doing this for the sake of it. We want to connect and reach people in a way that they find meaningful or useful or helpful or something constructive. I love back, I think it was Carl Lego, researcher who's used poetry a lot, and I think he describes himself as a poet as well. The question isn't, is this a good poem?
Yes.
The question is, what is this poem good for? And I think we would apply that to our stories, our songs, our films, performances, whatever.
Yes.
And that is something we can't answer ourselves. That's something we get by sharing some of the work and seeing what others make of it, what use they can put it to.
And the second thing that I would say that we have said to our students, because a lot of the time when students think, I want to write poetry, I want to do arts-based research, and they want to include it in a dissertation or a thesis, we've said, go and share it with your participants. Put their feedback in your dissertation, because whoever second marks it or who examines you, they might not like it. But if the participants, and women like them, or men like them, or children like them, or other people, they find it useful, then who are we to say, oh, this has no place in this dissertation?
And that is the ultimate, for me personally,
Yes.
for what research.
Yes.
It's not some numerical measure of impact.
Yes.
It's actually hearing people's, and that goes right back to our first reasons for going, is the accessibility, the engagement potential of this work.
Yes.
It's not exclusive. The vast majority of people can and do access stories or songs or film or visual arts or live performance.
Yes. So going back to the question you asked a moment, what's it good for? It's good for people can access it, and if it makes sense to them, it might bring a little bit of hope in their lives for a short amount of time, or show something, or help someone not feel quite so alone.
A million other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might be a good place to leave it. That's where I had it.
You're wrong, I'm right. Just remember that, all right? There's only one sheriff in this town, baby.
Sculpture.
Gargantuan. How can you have a workshop big enough for all this?
I don't know. You used to think you had big feet. Now you're not so sure. Imagine clothing all of those feet.